So I was chatting with a friend at work, we'll call him Paragon, and he said that Star Wars isn't sci-fi, it's fantasy.
Okay, cool, no doubt.
As a lifelong fan, I was confused and even a bit defensive. Faster than light travel, cloning, technologically advanced societies, that's sci-fi, right? Not to mention I don't like fantasy. Sorry, but yeah, it bores me. Don't get me wrong, some of them have caught my eye, but for reasons I'll get into later, it's why I've never watched iconic masterpieces like Lord of the Rings.
You're breaking my heart. You're going down a path I can't follow.
Because my debate with Paragon, which also extended to Foundation and its recent season 3 finale, got me thinking, how do we even categorize sci-fi and fantasy anymore? Where does one definitively end and the other begin? And does it actually matter? Well, let's settle this once and for all.
Energize.
Shall not pass!
Okay, first let's address the ent in the room. Yes, I've never watched Lord of the Rings. Yes, I don't like the medieval aesthetic, ancient prophecies, or magical get out of jail free cards, and hey, do you mind pointing those weapons elsewhere?
If I've offended you, I apologize. If not, I'd appreciate you pointing that elsewhere.
Look, it's not that I hate fantasy, it's just a lot of it feels like required reading.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this.
Lore dumps, made up languages, world maps that make me feel like I've got to study all the exam prep before we even get to the story. And it's overwhelming, but to be fair, not everyone who loves fantasy is obsessed with these specific elements.
Actually, none of that shit happened.
Clearly I'm a contributing factor to this, but for fans of the genre, I understand that it must feel like the critique conversations around fantasy have boiled down to either I don't like the world building, or I don't like the magic system.
You're saying it wrong. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
But I guess somewhere along the way, people became so obsessed with explaining every single aspect of their fantastical worlds that they sucked the actual wonder out of the genre for me.
Actually, the rules were changed in 5th edition concerning...
Nerd! Nerd!
And yes, I know what you're going to say. How is sci-fi any different? To that point, I tried and failed reading the Halo novel Krypton by Greg Bear, for reasons I'll have this guy explain.
This trilogy is like Dune-level science fiction. It is dense as all hell.
So yes, it can be just as overwhelming, but for me, sci-fi hits different. Science fiction typically doesn't rely on Tolkien-style world building or magic as a core mechanical primary focus. Take Marvel for example. Another work friend, who we'll call Arya, also chimed in saying superheroes are fantasy, and in the case of characters like Doctor Strange and Loki, I have to agree. There's no getting around the fact that one's a literal sorcerer and the other's straight out of Norse mythology. But in a world where quantum particles allow people to shrink or time travel, and gods are explained away as powerful beings from other realms, those fantasy elements are treated with a more rational approach, with consistent rules that at least keep it all somewhat grounded.
That's a quantum field generator, isn't it?
It's a soul forge.
Does the soul forge transfer molecular energy from one place to another?
Yes.
Quantum field generator.
Maybe you feel this way too, but Paragon also said that he gets taken out of a movie when he sees a smartphone, or anything else resembling our own real world. And escapism is a completely valid preference to have, but if that's the case for him, then I'm turned off by this.
Alright, once the dead man is revived, we can ask him 5 questions, at which point he will die again, never to be re-revived.
Why 5 questions?
I don't know, that's just how it works.
Seems arbitrary.
Can we get on with this, please?
One of his other points was that fictional planets like Mandalore, Gallifrey, or Xandar instantly make something fantasy because they're, well, fictional.
Wrong. Where we have to go is Nibidalia.
That's a made-up word.
All words are made up.
In comparison to something like Interstellar or The Martian, which is hard sci-fi. To me, that doesn't really make sense, because then that means everything that is fictional is pure fantasy. And I think it's important to make the distinction between the two very clear. From characters to the plot, you're telling me that something like the Fast and Furious franchise is fantasy because all the stunts are insanely exaggerated? Actually, on second thought, that one might be fair.
We're out of space! This is crazy, bro!
But you know what I mean. Plenty of sci-fi stories take place in fictional galaxies like Halo, but they remain sci-fi because they explore technology, space travel, and futuristic concepts with some level of scientific grounding. And the fictional setting can still follow science-based logic. The Expanse, for example, takes place in a fictionalized version of our solar system, but remains hard sci-fi because it prioritizes real-world physics, whilst Foundation imagines an intergalactic empire, but its story looks at this through the lens of sociology, mathematics, and psychohistory.
Boom! 2 + 2 is 4, -1, that's 3, quick maths.
Your math is no match for my gun, you idiot!
I guess at the end of the day, I'm just drawn to cool futuristic concepts and settings, and medieval Europe just feels stale in comparison.
You have no idea what you're dealing with.
Shakespeare in the Park? Doth mother know you weareth her drapes?
Whilst with sci-fi, I love how there's a balance between realism and escapism that the genre nails more consistently. It tends to have a logical, rule-based approach to imagination, which for me makes it easier to suspend my disbelief, especially in comparison to the over-the-top nature of hard fantasy. The what-if scenarios of something like Black Mirror give me the thrill of potential possibilities, often grounded in current science, tech, or politics. Speaking of, sci-fi has always been a mirror to real-world concerns, and as divided as the world is right now, I find it interesting and even important to think about the things directly and indirectly impacting our lives. Whether it's the social injustice of apartheid and xenophobia in District 9, Minority Report's surveillance, the greed of the corporation in that show whose name I can't say on YouTube, the ethics of AI, or war on the galactic stage. These subjects are affecting us in one way or another, and it's far more entertaining, enriching, and educational than any lesson I'll ever learn in a classroom. Besides, I want to be prepared for when our robot overlords take power.
I hate to say it, but humans are the actual worst.
Humanity had all the tools to heal their wounded planet and save themselves, but instead they chose greed and self-gratification over a healthy biosphere and the future of their children. As the great human philosopher Santayana once said,
Hey, shut up, that's boring! You guys, come check this out!
And unlike hard fantasy, it rarely asks you to relearn everything about how the world works. In fact, it often blends the familiar with the speculative. You're not memorizing kingdoms or keeping track of relationships between the different houses. You're just seeing a version of our world pushed further. And now to address the question that started this whole video.
Are you with us?
No.
While Star Wars doesn't focus on the technical workings, its universe is built on all the staples of science fiction through its tech. X-Wings, TIE Fighters, and larger-than-life Star Destroyers all feature complex engineering and faster-than-light travel. Sentient droids show a future where artificial intelligence is fully integrated into society. Blasters, planetary shields, and of course the Death Star reflect futuristic military technology. And though this can be seen as set dressing for a more fantasy-centered main plot to some, stories like Andor, which don't focus on the Jedi at all, have a clearer foothold in sci-fi. Speaking of Andor, it does a great job in demonstrating how entire galactic political structures exist. Like Dune and Mass Effect, which imagines their respective galaxies connected by technology and infrastructure, in the far, far away galaxy of Star Wars, planets are interconnected by trade, war, and diplomacy, which are all hallmarks of speculative interplanetary society.
Misa propose that the Senate give immediately emergency powers to the Supreme Chancellor.
So this is how liberty dies.
I haven't even gone into the genetic engineering of the clone army, the diverse xenobiology of all the alien races, or the many other aspects that are more quote-unquote science-based.
The shaft is ray-shielded, so you'll have to use proton torpedoes.
I'm telling you, man, it's science.
So in my mind, Star Wars is sci-fi, but it is also fantasy. For some reasons more than others.
That's not how the Force works.
In a show that's been dubbed as having lesbian space witches, supernatural elements don't require a rational, scientific basis. They just are. If it wasn't for the introduction of midichlorians, the Force in Star Wars is exactly that. Daphomir's witchcraft and the otherworldly involvement of the Mortis gods make it especially clear that the Force basically functions as magic, where the Jedi are essentially a combination of wizards and knights in space. Many worlds in Star Wars operate on fantasy logic and aesthetic rather than scientific consistency. Evidently, most planets only have one biome. Force visions and Jedi mind tricks are a thing. Explosions in the vacuum of space are the norm, etc. So yeah, Star Wars lives in this weird Venn diagram middle. It's not hard sci-fi like the free body problem, but it's no Wheel of Time either. It's science fantasy, and it works because of that balance.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now here's the plot twist. I say I don't like fantasy, but I've watched and loved Game of Thrones. Until I didn't. I watched Harry Potter, eventually, and as I've mentioned many times on this channel already, God of War is my favourite story of all time. So as I write the script for this video, I realise now that maybe I don't hate fantasy. Maybe what I really mean is I don't like a very specific type of fantasy, the Tolkien stuff, that we're going on a quest with a map and a prophecy and an ancient sword vibe. If anything, what I prefer is fantasy that's grounded, fantasy that feels modern and approached in creative ways, or even better, sci-fi with fantasy elements. Paragon saw hard sci-fi as definitive sci-fi, and everything else was fantasy. In a similar fashion, I saw the classic D&D Tolkien-like stereotype and assumed that was fantasy's whole identity, when that isn't strictly the case. Lightsabers and hyperspace travel offer the same sense of wonder as a steadfast sword and a perilous journey across the land in traditional fantasy. Good stories are good stories, no matter the genre, but it's just about what appeals to us as individuals. So no shade to Aragorn, he was right. Star Wars is fantasy, but it's also very much sci-fi, and that's exactly why I love it. But what do you think? Would you describe it as predominantly fantasy the way Aragorn sees it? What's the deciding factors behind that? And where do you draw the line between the genres for other works like Dune and Warhammer 40k? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe if you haven't, and until next time, may the Force and your personal preferences be with you.